What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2020 Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. Huge thanks to Blackout Tinting for providing me with their brand new GT4 to review for you guys today. And be sure to go check out their channel if you want to see more videos on this car in the future. It is a very sweet spec. So about the GT4, well, it's back now for the 2020 model year, and I reviewed the original GT4 about 5 years ago, and that car was pure magic, and I'm so glad they're doing another version of it here. This car is just such a special car, such a special combo too. You know, we were worried that the naturally aspirated engines were going to be going away, and now here they are, still continuing on and thriving here with this brand new 4-liter you have in the Cayman GT4, which is just one exciting component of this vehicle. But as far as the looks go, well, I at first just love the refresh they did for the 718 version of the Cayman here. It just looks so much sharper, and I already did the GTS version about 2 years ago, and so that's, you know, a very nice look, and then the GT4 just takes it to the next level. I mean, you have a much more aggressive front bumper there. I love the GT style bumper too, with a vent there right in front of the Porsche badge, the additional vents here on the sides, and even the GT4 there in the front lip looks very, very good. This one also has the upgraded LED headlamps that corner, and you know, the light turns in the corners with you, has those, and I like the blacked out look of those as well. They look really good. Also coming down to the sides here, these 20-inch wheels, and these ones are special ordered black. Usually they're a darker gray, but look really sharp. You'll also notice this car does not have this carbon ceramic brakes, which is refreshing to see, and it's also an $8,000 option for those brakes, and probably are overkill unless you're actually tracking this on a regular basis. And great that, you know, this one just has the regular brakes that also still look really nice, being drilled and everything. Really great looking brakes. Also coming down to the side, just all the little details you see on the Cayman are really beautiful. I love just the side mirror, the way that it's supported is very just sporty and lean, but also elegant at the same time. I also love that side scoop you have there, which of course is functional. It's very large, really sticks out a lot here on the GT4s, and I like how it has another GT4 logo there on the side of it. Going out to the back, I think that's probably the most striking part about the GT4 version of the Cayman, because of course you have that massive spoiler there on the back, which is functional, by the way. This car generates about 50% more downforce than the old GT4 without even adding in any additional drag or anything. And so that's a really impressive accomplishment, to, you know, basically have no additional drag and still have all that extra downforce. A lot of the extra downforce also comes from that rear diffuser, which is functional there by the exhaust, and looks great there too. And I also just love, again, the smoked out taillights you have, the very slim Porsche badge there going across the back. And this one does not have the GT4 emblem attached. That's just because this car just had its Expel paint protection film put on by Blackout Tinting, and so it's going to have that put back on. But anyway, it looks so good from the back end there. And then of course this color too, that's the big thing, this Miami blue color, which is an extra upcharge. I think it's totally worth it though. There's so many silver Porsches, so many, you know, more just I guess ordinary colors for these cars. I think this looks really great, especially with all the black accents on this car. It really looks really sharp, I think. And even just while I've been filming this review, I've already had someone come up and compliment the color. It's going to get a lot of attention, but also just look really, really good. And so overall, I think the exterior of the Cayman GT4 is just a home run. Right, so for the interior of the 718 Cayman GT4, well, it is a very cool place to be. Every time I get into a Cayman though, it always feels like everything is like 3/4 the size of a normal car. Everything's a little more miniature, but it's all just still very high-end and very cool and very purposeful too. So I mean, especially here in the GT4, I mean, just getting in, you have cloth door pulls. So anyway, and also you have the Alcantara everywhere here in this interior. I believe the base interior has race text, so this leather Alcantara is a little bit of an upgrade. I'm still not in love with Alcantara's seats, just because they don't seem to breathe as well for me over normal like perforated leather seats do, but they are still really great seats. That's the first thing here. I mean, these are the basic seats too. These aren't the crazy race bucket seats that are tons of money and stuff, and very uncomfortable from what I've heard as well. These are really comfortable and still have really beefy bolsters to them. I mean, so these are the basic ones. You can't get an 18-way power seat as well. This is the manual seat, and so those, I think you can even adjust the bolstering even more if you'd like. But these, I mean, you know, I'm not a big guy. I'm pretty small, only 5'9", and I still feel like these hug me in really well. And so yeah, I don't really see the need to go for the upgraded seats. Now you can get heated seats as an option here in the GT4, but there isn't any ventilated or cooling option or anything like that. So heated seats are about as luxurious as you'll be able to get here in a GT4 version, but really supportive and very comfortable seats too, these ones. And so I really like them a lot. The steering wheel is also fantastic here in the GT4. It's actually very similar to the previous gen GT4 steering wheel. I love how there's no buttons on it. I love the little rivets. That is something new they added here for these newer ones. I think it looks really cool, especially, you know, with this just black metal trim around it. It just feels so good. But the 9-3 grip is just glorious. It's perfect with the way that it has cutouts for your thumbs, and it just feels great. Also great large 10 and 2 notches, little stripe here at the top, and just a really nice simple wheel. Just a few little stalks here to control things off the wheel, but love this wheel. The gauges are also classic Porsche gauges, which if you've been in any other Porsche in the past few years, you know, feel right at home with these. I love, you know, the large tack front and center here is really cool looking, and the digital portion there on the right hand side is really nice too. So that will go through a bunch of your various temperatures, as well as it can even show you stuff like a G meter. You can do a lap timer. This has the Sport Chrono package, which has the stopwatch there on top of the dash, which I love. Just watching it tick away is really satisfying. But anyway, getting back to the gauges here, a bunch of other stuff. You can display your navigation map, which is nice, Bluetooth audio, all that kind of normal stuff as well. And so really nice little extra screen there. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, I first just have to comment, I love how Josh, the owner of this vehicle, how he spec'd this out so that you can have the exterior color for the interior trim here, the way it's painted. It looks so cool. And I think, you know, he actually mentioned in a video on his channel that it kind of gives it this retro vibe. And I agree. I wish that there was more paint matched interiors on cars these days. I think it really is cool. And especially in Porsche history, it does have a tie to the past. And so I love that he did that option here on this. I think it's a really great option to do regardless of what color you get, but especially here, the Miami blue really pops with this interior to make it a little more fun than just an all black interior. The white stitching or silver stitching here is also a very nice little touch. Then coming down, you have this slightly smaller infotainment system, but it's really high resolution. The graphics all look really great. It's very easy to use, just a nice easy touchscreen. It does actually bring up more options whenever your finger even approaches the screen, so you don't even have to touch anything to see some additional options if you'd like. And so one thing, now this one has the navigation, which is an option. That gives you Porsche Connect, which gives you Apple CarPlay. There still is no Android Auto in Porsches for some reason. I'm not sure why. So unfortunately, if you have an Android phone, you're out of luck. But Apple users, you do have that connectivity, which is nice. And otherwise, you know, just a volume and tune knob, very simple to tune radio stations, all the basic stuff. Not that you're going to probably be using the radio much in the GT4, but it is a really good, you know, stereo as far as that goes. You can also upgrade to a Bose surround sound system here in this, but this just has the standard speakers. And again, don't see much use for the Bose system when you have an exhaust that sounds as good as this one does. Then this one doesn't even have auto climate control. It's manual controls for that. But again, I think that's totally fine. You still have a little screen here. You still have your little toggle switches. And by the way, all these buttons have a really satisfying feel and sound to them. Every single one feels expensive here in this, which is impressive. Behind the shifter, you have also a couple of other buttons here. Not a ton of buttons here in this one, but all the good ones. The auto blip, which they now have for the new GT4s, as well as an exhaust button. And then the gear shifter, of course, right in the middle, which I will talk about more as we get out driving, but really nicely positioned there. Another little coin tray here you can see. And then as far as storage space in the GT4, it's, you know, not great, but this is a purpose-built sports car, not a big deal. You do have pockets in the doors, and another little pocket here in the front of the door. Also coming over to the middle here, you have this little center armrest. You can fit your phone or something in there. You also see a USB jack in there, but pretty small. You also do have two cup holders here, typical Porsche style, where they pop out of the center here and you know, swing out. And I think that's actually a good solution. Now, it won't accommodate really large cups or anything like that. It's not the sturdiest of cup holders, but I think, you know, for holding your coffee mug in the morning, you know, all those types of things, it should do just fine. And then otherwise, you know, as far as storing anything else in this vehicle, you do have a little bit of space behind the seat there. If you don't have your seat all the way back, you can maybe slide a coat or something. As far as trunks go, that is one really good thing about the Cayman being mid-engine, is that you have your normal kind of trunk in the back there, which isn't too big. Maybe you could fit like one carry-on size suitcase or a very large duffel bag, something like that would fit back there. And then in the front, I mean, that front trunk is massive. It's very, very deep, and you can fit, again, probably, I would say, actually two rollerboard suitcases would probably fit in there if they're smaller, carry-on sized. You could stand those up or, you know, stack them one on top of the other. And so tons of space in that front trunk. And so that makes it probably one of the most versatile sports cars in this segment whenever you consider that kind of stuff. All right, so starting to go for a drive. The Cayman here has the standard Porsche key, but he painted it to match the exterior. I love this option. I'm so glad that they allow you to do this. But just a couple of buttons. They're on a very nice key. I just love the shape of it. But it is keyless access, keyless entry, but it is still a twist to turn on ignitions, which is very cool. And it's on the left-hand side here in Porsche fashion. So you just twist it, and it roars to life. All right, so setting off here in the Cayman GT4. Well, the first thing you notice, I think, is just how low you're sitting. So it's about an inch lower than a regular Cayman as well. And so, you know, that's obviously part of the GT4 package, make it feel a little sportier and track ready. And you have excellent visibility though still. I mean, you have, obviously, again, everything's a little bit smaller here since the vehicle's a little smaller, but you have still a nice large windshield, pretty easy to see around this A-pillar. This car gets so many looks. It's so funny how many people are already staring at this thing. But yeah, it's very easy to see. I mean, out of the back, you have that spoiler, which, you know, kind of blocks your view a little bit, but it's not too bad. I think you'll be able to see around it just fine, but we'll continue to test that out as we continue on. But now we're on a main road here at a little bit of a higher speed, about 45 miles per hour, and you can hear a lot of, you know, road noise, tire noise. I mean, we got Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, and this, the engine and everything, it's a very raw experience, and I love that about this vehicle. You know, it's not going to be the greatest cruiser, but for what this is intended for, track days and spirited driving, it's going to be fantastic. But I mean, yeah, you do get a lot of road noise here, but I will say, so the suspension does have an adaptive setting here, and so right now we're in the comfort mode or the normal mode for the chassis, and you know, you feel the little grooves in the road, but it's not jarring, and it's actually pretty comfortable so far, at least on these pretty well-maintained roads. Other things that I noticed, even just sitting in a red light, you just feel this whole engine vibrating. I mean, the passenger seat, I can actually watch it shake while I'm sitting stationary. It's kind of hilarious just how alive this car feels. Every time you start it up, it just feels like it's this living creature that's breathing, and I mean, you feel everything going on with this vehicle. I mean, even just, you know, cruising here on like a highway, you feel so much through the steering. It just, you feel way more. I mean, all the little vibrations and everything, it's just so much more feedback. And even, it's just hilarious how just even sitting at a red light with your foot on the brake, you feel the brakes more. And one thing I will say about the brakes is that they do like to squeak a little bit here, even though this one just has the regular brakes. They are a little squeaky still, but I think that's partially because the pads you probably have on this are a little more aggressive and set up again for track duty, and so that's just what happens with track pads. You get a little bit of squeaking. So one thing to note there that's kind of interesting, even without the carbon ceramics. And so, yeah, I mean, just kind of cruising behind traffic, you know, it actually still is an exciting experience, even though obviously this vehicle has such high limits, and if you're not exploiting those limits, you might feel like it's a snooze fest. But with this car, you're feeling and hearing so much that it isn't still. It still is very alive, and it keeps you on high alert because of all the feedback you're receiving and just how much is going on here. And another thing that I really love too, whenever I was first setting off, is the clutch is so easy here. Now this vehicle only has about 600 miles on it, so it's broken in, but it's not, you know, heavily worn in or anything. But it's just still like, it's such an easy to use clutch, and I love that. And one other thing too, so you know, a lot of people say that, especially with the previous gen GT4, you needed to do a shorter final drive because it was way tall with its gearing. And you know, I'll have to wind this motor out to see how this one feels. But, you know, cruising in fifth gear, I mean, I'm sitting at 65 miles per hour. I'm sitting at 3,000 RPMs in fifth gear, and there's still plenty of punch here. I mean, even though peak torque doesn't come on until about 5,000 RPMs, and peak torque's not a lot, it's only 309 pound-feet. But even still, it still has plenty of punch for passing. And even if I were to go up into sixth gear, you're still doing fine. But anyway, we have the auto blip on, and as we're coming up to this little off-ramp, wow, it's so grippy. Man, man, this is insane. That was so effortless and so flat. And again, I wasn't even in the sport chassis setup or anything like that. Just in normal mode, it still is so flat. It's pretty impressive. And by the way, this is with the exhaust in its normal mode. There is a sport mode, but I haven't turned that button on yet. I figured I'd wait until we get our first acceleration done and put it on then. I'm pleasantly surprised with everything about this. It's punchier. I think the gearing feels a little shorter than it did in the previous gen, to me at least. It feels, I mean, obviously you have a little more power here than you did in the old GT4 too, with this new engine, so that might help things as well. But you know, it doesn't feel like it, you know, wants to be bogging down or that it feels too slow. And you can also, now, you know, whenever they first launched these, it was manual transmission only, but now you can get a PDK option for this if you want. And with that, you know, you'll have even closer spaced gears, and that should help it feel even a little punchier. But I still love the way this 6-speed manual feels. It just, with the auto blip feature, it's really easy too, because it's just so precise with rev matching those downshifts. And since this isn't my car, I'm not going to bother trying to be a heel and toe champion. I'm just going to let the car do it on its own, because it'll do it better than I can anyway, probably. So, but this shifter is so nice feeling too. So it's nice short throws, but it's not too stiff. Some short throw shifters are really stiff, especially aftermarket ones. This, you know, it still gives you a good amount of leeway there, and feels, you know, flexible enough without feeling like it's sloppy either. And I really love it. Just, it's so mechanical with the notchiness of it. It's like, it feels so good. It's been a long time since I felt a shifter that was this communicative and just felt this good in every single gear. You're never going to miss a shift, I think, in this car, because it is just so well defined and so precise. Another thing is throttle response. So perfect and immediate, and I think that's why, you know, that combined with the clutch is what makes it so easy to be smooth from a stop in this thing, because everything does exactly what you want it to do. You know, there isn't anything that's lost in translation or any kind of weird holdups. There isn't any weird rev hang or anything. Everything about this is just it's just perfect so far, and that perfection means that it's very easy to drive, and I really appreciate that, because I can't say that for all previous Porsches in the past. Some of them could have been a little tricky with the clutch and stuff, but this is really so easy to drive now, and so it's really the best of all the worlds with the way they set this up, just even whenever, again, you're just going at low speeds. But enough of this slow driving around stuff. Let's turn onto this back road here and see how it does. I'm going to put it into the sport chassis mode and the sport exhaust, and yeah, that's about it. There's no actual full-blown sport mode, but here we go. It's still got long legs though, man. Second gear can get you really far. Whew. So the Cayman GT4 here runs the new 4-liter flat-six naturally aspirated engine, does 414 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque, which sound like small numbers, but in a car that's under 3,200 pounds, that gets you up and going very quickly. Porsche claims 0 to 60 times of 3.7 seconds, even with this manual. So, I mean, the automatic PDK is going to be way faster than this manual is, but it still is really, I mean, that's impressive for a vehicle with 414 horsepower, which just goes to show how the specs, you know, don't always convey the full story. Oh, man, and so, you know, now even I'm in third gear here and just, you know, cruising around, you know, 3,000 RPMs and stomping on it. You get the beautiful Porsche flat six sound that you all know and love, and it feels really good. But even while we're stuck behind traffic, a couple other things to note here. So you have really actually light steering, and it might shock you just how light this steering is, but it feels so good. It's still so precise, and you don't need overly heavy steering for it to feel sporty and good. This just, you know, combined with the tires, which just have so much grip, and, you know, you're on a really low profile tire and stuff, so you're going to feel so much through the steering, and it just feels really good. By the way, the tire setup here, you have Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, and they are 245 wide in the front, 295s in the rear. They're 20-inch wheels all around, plenty of grip. Sport Cup 2 tires are very aggressive, aggressive in their setup. I'm sure even the PS4S would have been totally fine, but here, you know, if you're going to be doing track driving in this, you're going to want probably the Cup 2s, I'm supposing, even though you're going to have probably much shorter of a life out of these tires with those. But yeah, I mean, tons of grip, way more grip than you're ever going to be able to use on the street, honestly. All right, another acceleration, second gear. This thing is so quick, and the gearing still is a little too tall, I think, because I can't even get close to that 8100 RPM red line, you know, on normal back roads without going too fast. We'll try and find an opportunity to get it up to that red line here later, but oh man, it is still so punchy though. Even in that mid-range, it's got tons of power. Now, you know, peak torque, like I said, comes on at 5,000 RPMs, and I think it's close to red line there for the peak horsepower. I think it's like 7,600 RPMs, so you really do want to wind it out to make all that power, but it still feels plenty punchy even if you don't take it to red line every time. Again, there's red line. Oh man, then you gotta slow it back down, and these brakes do a really good job of slowing you down as well. Now again, these are not the carbon ceramics, but if you are interested in the peak braking performance, you can stop from 70 to 0, according to Car and Driver, at 148 feet with those carbon ceramics, which is really an intense braking session to go from 70 to 0 that short. Yeah, and so now, you know, in the sport chassis setup, you do feel the road a little bit more. It's a little bit more bumpy. It's still not uncomfortable, but, you know, I think honestly for the type of driving we're doing, we can even just pop it out of that back into the normal. And it's pretty amazing how much it does smoothen up a little bit whenever you take it out of that sport mode. It's pretty impressive. Oh man, but this thing, this would be so much fun to do a track day in, because you're not going to, you know, get this car's full potential, even close to it, on any back roads at anything remotely close to legal speeds. It is just like, you could probably do triple the speed limit around all these corners if you wanted to. It really is so stout. So as far as some of the other technical specs here of the 718 GT4, so the suspension's really trick. So it has the whole front axle actually from the 911 GT3. So you have that, you know, for your first level of competency, and then in the back you also have some rear suspension components from the GT3. Listen to that sound all day. By the way, in addition to that 3.7 seconds 0 to 60, you'd think, oh, well, maybe the launch is good, but it's not that fast, you know, after 60 time. But if you continue on and go into the quarter mile, Car and Driver got an 11.9 second quarter mile time at 120 miles per hour. So, I mean, this thing keeps pulling even once you're up at higher speeds. I mean, a lot of that is the taller gearing again, but, you know, it's really impressive that it accelerates as fast as it does, even with the gears being as tall as they are. And if you do have an issue with that, then you could always swap to a shorter final drive. There's companies out there that offer that, but I really don't think you even need it. I mean, sure, it would probably improve it, but there's not like there's anything wrong with it the way it is right now, that's for sure. But yeah, even going over potholes and stuff now, totally comfortable. Here's a nice tight corner. Man, yeah, this thing is like on rails. It really feels like that. And that's, you know, a very loosely thrown around term, but this thing, you can really take around corners like it's just no sweat at any speed. It really is crazy. Of course, being the mid-engine layout, that gives you such great balance too, and just helps this thing to just, again, everything just feels so effortless. The brakes are so immediate here, every whim. So it gives you so much confidence, because the brakes really start to bite down very quickly, and so, you know, it's like you just lean into the brakes a little bit, and they're pretty stiff brakes, but as soon as you lean into them, you get some nice bite out of it. So I mean, everything about this car gives you so much confidence. There's been some people that have compared this to like a 997 GT3. And I actually was able to review one of those just last year that had a couple of modifications on it, like it was a more loud exhaust on it and a couple other things. And that feels very similar to this. Trying to think, you know, I think this feels a little more refined than a 997 GT3. That was a little bit harsher, I think. Now that one was also set up for track duty, so it had a little bit of a stiffer setup and stuff. So it's not a fair comparison. It wasn't totally stock, but you know, this just gives you some of the modern amenities and some of the modern stuff, like the, you know, the active exhaust and the adaptive suspension and all these other things. It still gives you a really great and raw experience, and I think it is very similar to those old GT3s. I have not, unfortunately, driven a new GT3 to compare it to that, but compared to the 997, it is very similar in its magic. Obviously that's a different setup because it's not mid-engine, you know, but it's very similar in its confidence. I think the shifter in this is a little bit better than the shifter in the 997 GT3. It's a little bit of a shorter throw here in this, and a little bit easier to not miss a gear and stuff. That, you know, the gears were a little more closer in the way they were spaced. This is a little bit easier to, you know, grow through the gears really quickly, but it's a fantastic car. So one of the other things I do have to mention is now there is the GTS 4.0. And, you know, the regular GTS before it had the 4.0 engine was nice. I mean, it was very impressive in its own way. It just didn't sound as good as this. And, you know, I also wasn't a huge fan of the PDK. It liked to bog down a little bit more than I personally would have liked. But now you can get the, you know, the GTS 4.0s, which you can get in the manual, of course, as well. And, you know, that's about 20 grand cheaper than the GT4 here. And you get 20 less horsepower as well. So you do give up that, you know, a little bit of extra grunt. And obviously the GT4 and the Boxster Spyder are much more aggressive with their looks, with their aerodynamics. They have more downforce, sportier suspension, stouter brakes. Like I said, all the axles and stuff from the GT3. It is a very comprehensive, you know, change. And so, you know, it's not like they're the same or anything even close to it, but they do have a very, very similar engine. And so if the engine is the main thing you're looking for out of these vehicles, you might be better off, you know, losing that 20 horsepower, saving yourself 20 grand and getting, you know, one of the GTS 4.0s. But if you really do want the best handling, especially the best track performance, or just something that's going to be the most exotic, I mean, I'm sure the GTS 4.0s will also hold their value reasonably well, but the GT4s have been famous for their resale value being so strong. And so, you know, that maybe it's worth paying the extra 20 grand because you might have stronger resale, possibly, if you're worried about resale. But either way, you know, you can't go wrong with any of these 718s as long as you're getting a 6-cylinder version. I think the 4-cylinder is not terrible if, you know, you're into that, but personally I think it's well worth paying the extra for one of the 6-cylinder versions. I also love just how immediate the response is. Even in 4th gear, you just stomp on it, it's an instant response. It's kind of insane how it's almost like an electric car with just how fast between you putting your foot down and when you get a response. It's like instant response. Obviously, it's not instant peak torque or anything, but it is just insane how much it just, you know, there's like an on-off switch of like, it just like, once it wants to go, I mean, it plants you back in your seat and then you just hang on. But, oh man, this thing, it's just, every single corner I take it around, I just love it more and more, and I just so desperately want to do a track day in this car, because that's where you can really test this thing's mettle. But as it is right now, it is really fun, and I do think it is a very raw experience. Now, I don't know if I'd want to spend 8 hours driving around in this. You know, it is a lot to take in. It is, even in the, you know, softer suspension mode, you know, just because you get so much road noise and it's just so intense with everything, you know, it is a little bit more, you know, less of a grand tour and more of just a all-out assault weapon of a vehicle. Oh man. It's just, yeah, I do wish there was maybe a little bit of a shorter gear, because I'd love to sample that red line even more. Now, I turned off the exhaust, but you still might be able to hear certain frequencies. There is still some drone, and so that's another reason why, you know, spending 8 hours in this with the exhaust droning a bit, there it is. And then with, you know, the ride being, you know, still not too bad, but that plus just all the road noise and, I mean, all the just sensory overload you get in this car, I do think it would get a little tiring, you know, on a long drive, like I said. But for shorter spurts and just, you know, doing fun little, you know, drives with friends and things like that, I think it's going to be great still. Another acceleration. Spurts of fun here in this car, but then just going around the corners, you know, that gives you fun all the time as well. But oh, that engine is sweet. Oh man. And the fact that you can't really fully open it up except for certain instances. Really makes you enjoy it more, I think, though, whenever you finally can open it up safely. It just makes it so sweet to be able to do that. The last thing to mention here about the GT4 is the pricing of it. Now, you know, these obviously are expensive. It's a brand new Porsche and a GT Porsche at that, so it's not cheap. They start at about $100,000, then you can quickly go up, you know, to the 110, 120 range, depending on the options you have. And if you do the carbon ceramics and those race buckets, then you can probably get close to like 130 or so. Yes, there's some more exotic used stuff you can get, but as far as new cars go in this price range, you know, it is kind of in a really nice niche where you have a lot of the luxurious stuff, which is just over 100,000. The, you know, the more grand tour vehicles, you know, the AMG GTs, the Lexus LC500, you know, those types of things, but they're all way heavier. You know, they're going to feel bigger and not as agile as this. This is just, you know, a scalpel on a back road, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. And so, and it still can keep up and hold its own on the straights as well, so you're not really giving anything up there either, but it just, you know, those all have V8 engines and, you know, just more horsepower, more brute force. You know, you get burnouts in those, and, you know, all kinds of drama from wheel spin and all that kind of stuff. So those have, you know, a little bit more theater in that regard, but then in this, it's just the old school type of theater. Nothing manufactured in, nothing that's over the top. It's just a very pure driver's car that you can feel every little thing about it. You can, you know, there's no safety tech here in this. There's no convenience features. You know, it's all just about the driving experience, not trying to coddle you into luxury or make you comfortable at all, honestly. It's about just transmitting as much of the driving experience to the driver and really get back to, you know, just a pure driving experience. And that's really where I think the Cayman GT4 doesn't really have any rivals right now, honestly, at least here in America, and at least in this very similar pricing. You know, really, it's this or nothing as far as a manual transmission, especially. And obviously, Porsche's flat sixes, they're the only ones that do that either. So, you know, it's just a very unique combo. I think, you know, this is definitely an improvement over the old GT4. It's a similar experience, but I think it's definitely a better experience here in the new one. And, I absolutely love it. And if you have the means to get one and something like this, if you care about lightweight handling, not just grip. I mean, this has plenty of grip, by the way. It does 1.1 G around car and driver's skid pad. So, I mean, it's not like you're lacking grip, but, you know, you don't have the same kind of muscly grip like you get with some of those muscle cars with their insanely wide tires and stuff. This is more of a, you know, simpler handling experience. So, yeah. I absolutely love it. I'm sure you guys do as well, but let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I also want to give a huge thanks once again to Blackout Tinting for allowing me to review this GT4. If you do want to see more videos on this GT4, Blackout Tinting's YouTube page, I will link it above. They're going to have all kinds of videos on this car talking about it, you know, the ownership experience of it, all that type of stuff. And so definitely subscribe to them, go check them out to, you know, find out more about this vehicle, find out what it's like to live with, and just follow along with their experience. They also do fantastic work. If you're looking for paint protection, film, window tinting, all that kind of stuff, they've done all my cars. They do such a good job with all that stuff, and so definitely check them out for that as well if you'd like. But you know, even if you're just interested in this, check it out, because they're going to do a lot more Porsche videos here in the future. But anyway, yeah, that's all my thoughts here on the GT4. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.